wanted to kick it off with sort of the big issue that everybody has to contend with in all of their video and TV buying, and that is containing costs across the different screens. To take the lead here, we have Jackie Barrera, who is the Director of Media Planning at Asher Media, and joining her are Dave Kersey, SVP of Executive Media Director at GSD&M, and Carolina Portela, who is the VP and Director of Strategic Investment at MAGNA Global. Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
This is so weird.
It is. I can't remember the last time I held a microphone. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and kick it off. So, you know, like Steve has mentioned, there are a lot of people that the landscape has become a lot more fragmented with everybody flipping over to streaming, and costs are all over the place, especially with CTV. So how are you moving brands with high linear spends over to more digital? You know, besides precision targeting, what are the benefits?
I can take that one. I think it starts with a conversation with clients and a realization of where their audience is. I think they all recognize, it is so weird holding a microphone. They all recognize that there's been a significant shift, even starting before COVID, but COVID certainly accelerated consumer consumption and the changes there. So clients understanding that they need to make up some of the lost audience in linear, whether that's aging down or scaling their audience and finding new ways to reach them. That's one. The other is just having a realization of what media channels are working best for you. There's two clients that come to mind that we work with. One's a retail client, and they're trying to accomplish two things. One is age down their demo a little bit, but also reach those that aren't seeing any of their linear advertising. And that's really where we started. I think from there, it takes a lot of education with clients to truly teach them the difference between linear and streaming video, because you're not having an apples to apples conversation. You're having either a rating point conversation with TV, or you're having an audience and technology conversation with video. So there's a lot of education to understand the nuances and the benefits to your other point of the question of precision targeting. I think there's significant benefits, but getting clients to understand the nuances and the differences, that it isn't apples to apples, I think is really critical to the conversation.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to show the clients, especially if they're spending a lot of money in linear TV, there is a certain inflection point where you're not getting any other eyeballs, right? So you've maxed out on reach, you're really just building that frequency. And we know that at a certain point, that increased frequency can actually have a negative effect on awareness or effectiveness. So I think that's something that we've tried to use for our clients, to show them how that shift or adding on CTV can help complement a high linear TV budget, in order to capture those eyeballs that are no longer there, like Dave mentioned, especially if you have a younger target. I think it's a little bit easier, but it's definitely important for them to see how adding them together and looking at it more holistically kind of fills that pie again.
Is CTV giving you a similar reach?
As a standalone, again, we like to look at it holistically. Again, I think it also depends on your budget. So obviously, if you have a large budget and you can dip into a lot of different sources, then yeah, you're going to make up that reach for sure. I don't know if it's making up the reach. I think it's still proven that TV is the fastest and most efficient way to get your reach to where you need it to be the quickest. But like Dave said, there are people who aren't there. So if you're not increasing your profile, your partners, then you're missing out on reaching those viewers.
Yeah, I think the question should be around scale, because reach almost implies that you're complementing or trying to reach the same audience in linear as you are in connected. And I don't think that's truly the right way to look at it, because you're complementing, you're adding, right? You're creating an incremental reach where you're scaling your ability to reach eyeballs and reach people. Some clients are looking at it as an additive to make up some of that lost ground. And some are looking at flipping completely off, right? Going from linear to streaming because of the technology on the back end and all of the analytics and data that you get from the back end. And it really depends on the client's objective on what is the most appropriate way to go, right? And that's our job as agencies, to help guide them and lead them, and again, educate them. Is it apples to apples? No. Are you making up the same reach? I just don't think that's the right way to look at it, because you're scaling your audience versus scaling the same audience as linear.
That makes sense. So what are, how are you all determining ROI on CTV? Let's
Well,
take that.
yeah, so I think there are still a lot of clients who are using ROI as that baseline of success, right? Right or wrong. We could argue the methodology behind it, but it is still difficult at this time to prove out the ROI in CTV because of the costs and because of, the more targeted you get, the higher your CPMs. And what we have seen, at least from a lot of our clients who turn to ROI, is that it is not showing the same numbers that they were expecting when you're thinking about the fact that it is still, from a consumer standpoint, they're still watching TV, right? They're still watching it on the largest screen in the house, the same content for the most part. They're opted in, so it's even more of an engaging audience, but for some reason that ROI is just not following. So we try to, negotiate the CPMs down as much as possible in order to show that. And we've seen, I guess, a couple things for some of our clients. And again, these are some of the more broader clients, right? So as Dave mentioned, you can get super precise in CTV, which you can't get in linear, and that's a benefit, but it comes with a cost implication. So for the broader clients who started out being very targeted in CTV, they've found that as they broaden their targets, so either going from demo to people 2+, or just taking out some of that third party or first party audience targeting, we are seeing ROI go up very minimally, but it is happening. And so we can assume that, that coupled with lowering the CPMs is the reason behind it.
Yeah, I agree with everything she said. I mean, one of the ways we look at it as well, we have a lot of brand awareness, brand building clients, and we have brand lift studies in place just to gauge all channels and the effects of messaging, targeting, and everything in between that each channel has. I don't think we're seeing, to your point, the same level of ROI in streaming video as we do from some of the other channels. But again, it's in the methodology, and I don't think there's a silver bullet yet on how we evaluate that because consumers are, to your point, they're watching a screen. Regardless of how they're getting the content, consumers don't think that way necessarily, right? So it does have a lot of implications on the back end from a reporting standpoint and really quantifying the investment level. There are the other metrics of, increased search traffic. If you're looking at any kind of testing between streaming, search queries, or any other kind of channel attribution, but you have to do those in chunks and in silos, as I'm sure all of you guys are aware. And you can certainly do that to start measuring, the implications of streaming, but that takes a lot of effort and a lot of coaching with clients to get that off the ground.
Yeah, I think we're a little bit away from, or ways away from ROI being just like a secondary,
Yeah.
right, metric, but I think we'll get there at some point to show the effectiveness in other ways. But right now we just got to get those ROIs up.
So there are, with the rise of CTV, there are a lot of ways to buy CTV. So how do you go about choosing the most beneficial partners, whether it's direct or programmatic or, a reseller?
I mean, there's so much rigor that goes behind defining it, because again, that's where it's different from linear. As all of you guys know, linear is selling their own inventory in most cases, where all of these partners could be selling similar inventory, reselling inventory. So it goes back to defining what the client's goal is. If it is incremental reach, or if it's a complement to linear, what are the best outlets to reach similar content environments, working direct with partners. I guess I'll keep names out of this, but working directly with partners to achieve that similar premium content environment, picking shows or categories and whatnot. But then there's a huge opportunity for programmatic, just for efficiency, scale, and looking at frequency management across the board. So it really depends on the client's goal and what you're trying to achieve with the video.
Yeah, I agree for sure. There's not a one size fits all, right, approach. I think budget has a lot to do with it, as well as campaign objective, and just what the client feels comfortable with, right, at the time that they're ready to approve a plan. But yeah, a lot of rigor goes behind it. I think we had a strategy a couple years back that was device first, right? So make sure you're getting that mass scale across all the different devices, and then going to your handful of content partners that you really feel align with either your target audience or just your brand, and places that you want to make sure that you're showing up in, and then using programmatic to kind of fill in those gaps, right? And to do all the things that Dave just mentioned in terms of managing that frequency. I think what we've found over the last year, within the linear upfront at least, is that every single linear deal had a digital component to it, especially with the new platforms that have come out this year. So it makes that handful of partners a couple or more handfuls of partners. And so that strategy has been a little bit challenged, I guess. So I think us as an industry need to figure out how are we managing the overlap and still keeping those partnerships alive, because they matter and they do make sense. But again, how are we not just becoming even more fragmented than we were 4 years ago?
Yeah, I was going to add to that. I think relationships are key. And when you look at, portfolios, right? So something like a Disney or whatnot, the digital properties are often included in your upfront deals and your negotiations. So you have to consider that as part of the overall mix. But there isn't a one size fits all. And I think there's a place for most in a plan, depending on what you're trying to achieve again. And it does go down to what your budget is, right? What's your budget and what are the goals associated with those budgets? Because working with a direct partner will give you some scale and some guaranteed inventory within the right environment. And then you find those partners that can add on to it. One of our clients, their target audience is 16 to 24-year-olds. So it's a very young niche audience, definitely not a linear TV audience. In most cases, unless it's live events. And so figuring out how we build scale in the premium video environments has been tricky, because we are looking at direct, but we also need to add some of the other programmatic partners or inventory partners just for scale, and to make sure we're reaching everyone across devices, because it's no longer a living room screen conversation anymore. It's across all screens. And video is even beyond that, right? It's gaming, it's social, it's everywhere. So how do you build the right video holistic plan to have maximum impact for that audience? And so there is no one size that fits all, and you have to think about everything holistically for the audience and the objective.
Would you say most of your budget is going towards direct partners versus a programmatic?
I think it varies by client.
She can't say.
Yeah, I can't really say, but we still
can
have a
tell
lot
us,
of
we
direct
don't mind.
partnerships, because we do see the value in that for sure. And we're able to get things that we can't from those direct partnerships and relationships that we just can't get programmatically. So to Dave's point, I don't see those going away. In a perfect world, we can, merge them all together and take all of our direct deals and activate them through a DSP or something that can manage holistically. But again, some of these direct partnerships, the terms don't allow for that, or there's cost implications in doing so.
Roundtable discussion.
Yeah.
I think we're about 40-60, 40 direct, 60 other partners.
Okay. I think that it seems like a lot of the linear budgets that you might have would be maybe shifting within the same partner just to their digital arm, versus are you adding dollars, or are you taking the linear budget and then just shifting it over to those partners? And this might be more roundtable, but
I think it depends on what you're trying to accomplish. I mean, our client that's reaching that very young demographic, we've effectively pulled out of linear TV altogether and are a digital first approach now in most ways, right? I wouldn't say 100%, but that is our approach based on the audience and how we can scale, reach, connect, and grab their attention. But depending on the partnership and relationship, because those are so critical, especially now with so many sellers of video inventory, having those relationships that you trust and you can negotiate and you get alphas, betas, incrementality opportunities are critical. So whether that's with a portfolio company or it's with a direct partner, that sometimes defines a lot of the approach too.
So with the higher CPMs that we're seeing with connected TV, what are some ways that we can, what are some ways that y'all are trying to get these CPMs down?
I could start with this one. Again, I think the way that we structure our deals, it really all starts with that people to plus CPM and trying to get it as efficient as possible. I think some people in this room can attest that we're pretty aggressive with what we are asking for, especially as our spends are increasing. We expect and our clients expect that they're getting some sort of value from that. And then from that, I think a hill that I am 100% willing to die on is equivalized 15s. It is something that it's hard to tell a client to move who runs a lot of 15s in linear because of the efficiencies that they get from it, to shift their dollars to digital where they're not seeing the same benefits and it's a more expensive CPM. I think we've been successful in some cases in getting equivalized 15s or some sort of discount by running 15s, and those partners see more dollars from those clients because again, it's just incentivizing them to shift, and they can see the value on paper a little bit more. I think especially if you're equivalizing the longer form units, there's no reason why we shouldn't be equivalizing the lower units.
Agree.
Yeah, agreed completely.
And a hill I am willing to die on for sure.
It goes back to the idea that there are a lot of partners that sell similar inventory. So how do you look at, the right value, the right guarantees for inventory, and negotiating down CPMs based on that? Because you can look at partners similarly. You can find scale in similar partners, let's say like a Hulu and a Roku, right? They have massive scale. You can find audience sizes across both. Their CPMs, depending on the agency, are pretty divergent from each other, right? One could be really high than the other one. And it comes down to what level of scale are you looking for? Because you can find your audience across video, across partners. So it's figuring out how you leverage your relationships, negotiate down those CPMs, and have the realization with partners that you can find that audience through other means if you need to at a more efficient CPM. I think the 15 conversation is a big one because when you think about best practices and messaging within the video environments, it is shorter form video that's driving impact and attention. And that's something that agencies are pushing, and we're seeing it in a lot of our results, but it now requires our partners to meet us halfway and figure out how we can negotiate similarly for the most impact for clients. And you will see dollars start coming your way if you're working with us in that fashion.
Great. So those were my main questions. Did we want to take some time and answer some audience questions too?
If you have a question, please raise your hand. I'll bring the mic over to you. And please, throughout the show, stand up so everybody can see you. Tell us who you are and who you're with.
And your most embarrassing story.
You got it? When I stand up, I'm a lot taller.
Oh, that's okay.
There you go. My name's John Halverson. I'm the Global Vice President of Consumer Experience for Mondelez International, more commonly known as Oreo, so I'm not in hiding. My question for you guys is, I'm a client, and so I know clients are dumb, and we move kind of slow. I just want to know, where do you see, are you happy with the rate of change clients are making? Are we going too fast, too slow, about right? We just had a big upfront moment over the last 4 months. Do you think clients got it? Do you think they moved, they were prepared, they weren't prepared? And if they weren't prepared, are they going to be ready for next year? And how do you feel about that change?
I'll speak in generalities. When clients aren't dumb, you're incorrect. I think the rate of change is slow. I think it goes back to a lot of education of what's going on in the marketplace because it is incredibly fragmented. Clients, as you know, have the internal pressures, right? So everything on the business end, which impacts some of your decisions you're making with the agencies and your media spend, media tactics, and so on and so forth. I don't think it's changed as quickly as it should. I don't know if that's part on the agencies guiding clients or if that's a factor of, brand operations. There needs to be a lot quicker movement because the more brands get on board with this, it almost gives us more leverage to work with partners to find efficiencies and scale in some of these partners. So the equivalized 15s is a good example. If more brands are demanding that, that gives us leverage to say we have to deliver on this versus us trying to push that needle. I think COVID had significant implications across the board. We all know that, right? Clients are managing their business, their supply chain issues, all of these other factors while trying to maintain sales. And so could they have evolved quicker? Possibly, but there's too many other pressures that they're focused on. But I think now that's where agencies really need to step up and guide clients, simplify how you go to market, how you talk about these things, how you look at linear versus streaming video to show true impact and not ROI necessarily, but what it does for the overall campaign delivery.
Yeah, I think it varies by client a lot. So some of our clients have been leaned into CTV for years now, and others are just dipping their toes, and others have completely shifted over, right? They don't even spend on linear TV anymore. And that varies based on who they're trying to reach, again, their budget, what they have to work with, and then just how comfortable the client is to kind of dive into a space that does not have the proven track record at this moment that linear TV does. I definitely think it is on the agency side to educate in terms of, you know, what that share of viewership looks like. We like to, we would recommend kind of just following the viewership, right? So time spent with linear versus time spent with ad-supported streaming. Your budget should mirror what that share split is, with, you know, some plus or minus a few points. But yeah, that's kind of what we recommend. And then our job as agencies is to show them why and prove it out on the back end.
Yeah, our whole approach is audience first. And to your point, following the audience, following the eyeballs, the consumption, the engagement. Thinking now specifically to some of our clients, when it comes down to client education, those are our direct clients. But how they're getting budget approval is through other stakeholders. Those stakeholders are looking at linear TV rating points, to some degree, vanity plays, right? They want to see themselves in college football. So the conversation with clients is half the battle. Then the client's conversation with their internal stakeholders is a whole nother dynamic that we certainly support and can help guide those conversations. But it's a bigger thing than just our media clients or brand clients moving fast enough, because there are all those other pressures. And I mean, specifically, there's an example where we brought in streaming TV, connected TV into the mix. And the clients understood it was an audience first approach where we were following our demographic, engagement, all of these factors, but got pushback from internal stakeholders because they didn't understand it. And our client didn't understand it well enough to educate them. So it was kind of this domino effect back and forth. We netted out in a good place and got there. It took a lot of work to get there though. So I think it needs to move quicker. How that education happens with the larger stakeholders that are approving budgets for our clients, I think that's the missing piece that we need to figure out.
Good question. Hello. Hi, I'm Racine Levy. I work for Angie, but I came from the agency side. I was at Zenith for 8 years, and now I'm running all in-house media buying at Angie. So I am finding a lot of trouble on the client side because I have that agency mindset of really convincing why we should keep moving forward with an upfront. We're seeing double digits rates year over year. We're being mandated to buy 30 to 60% in digital, anything with a plus in front of it. So how are you kind of educating your clients on the importance of the upfront coupled with the importance of a CTV spend?
Yeah, this year was brutal.
Yes, it was.
For sure. I think while the ratings are continuing to decline, and so this is like the only industry where you pay more for less, basically, there are still people who watch a lot of linear TV and they're not streaming. And so again, you have to look at things more holistically and be audience first and just video first to show them that. The other thing is, if they are a high spender in linear TV, yes, you're paying increases in the upfront, but you're going to be paying a whole lot more if you wait and do scatter. So you have to, it's kind of like the devil that you know versus the devil you don't. But yeah, there were some very difficult conversations this year for sure. I think, again, if your audience is still watching TV, it is a super valuable and efficient place to be. and then couple that with streaming, and you're just going to increase your reach altogether. So again, it's those conversations that aren't easy, but yeah, we'll see what happens next year. I also think there was a lot of right sizing that was happening this year, with last year being COVID and the upfront being a little bit more unstable. I think a lot of the networks were trying to make up for some lost ground. So if you look at it over a 2-year period, it might not be as steep, but yeah, the numbers, they were definitely the highest I've seen. So not fun.
Yeah, totally echo that. It's been a tough one. We have an incredible team that hopefully gets some sleep now that it's past them. I think transparency is the big one too for internal, to show this is the reality, right? We're not making these numbers up. It's the marketplace, but giving them the options of here's how you can reach a similar audience elsewhere at a more effective CPM. It's different. It goes back to the education and the conversation around the goal of those channels, but it's a tough conversation to have with clients. I think the big one that I think we benefited from with our clients is the increases in the scatter marketplace, which are, I mean,
Scary.
even wilder than the upfront marketplace. And in a way, it was a little bit of a scare tactic, not intentionally, but for clients who budgets are flat year over year or down based on previous year sales because of COVID. Now they're getting even less impressions with their dollars. So they want to take action quickly and get the most out of it, knowing they're not going to make up the same level of impressions with a flat budget year over year. So it's transparency, and I think finding other solutions to find similar audiences.
I have a whole bunch of reporters' questions that I want, if anybody doesn't have any more questions in the room.
Lauren Schweitzer from Dish Media. You talked a lot about the sticker shock with, targeted media, digital, addressables the same way. That eCPM though is, you're paying for the impressions delivered. So when clients are analyzing linear, do you ever look at that delivered CPM, or does everything kind of just tie back to the plan cost per point and they're kind of blinded to what that delivered eCPM looks like on the linear side?
I mean, I guess it depends on how you've set up the campaigns. Ultimately, we provide all the data points. We look at all factors and report out depending on the client's understanding or their concern over certain factors. I think eCPM is a critical one, especially as you get into the connected landscape or the digital landscape, because there's somewhat of a comparison if you're looking at effective CPMs across tactics. So it depends on client preference, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I also just category, right? So for a lot of our pharma clients, like that precision is huge because again, they're not wasting dollars spent on someone who doesn't have the ailment that they're trying to solve for. But then you have to add on the fact that they're paying us for a 60-second spot. And so it does kind of offset it. So again, I think it's more about finding that balance of precision based on your audience, what your objectives are. But we have found for our more broader clients that there is a point where the precision does not provide the same value, but certain messages do need that more targeted approach. So again, it's campaign by campaign, but there are definitely some of our clients who look at the strategic target CPM because out of everyone in this room, only 2 people would be even part of their target audience. So it is a priority for them.
I want to take MC privilege and ask one final question that has to do with my experience from the day that Google TV was installed in my house by Google back like 15 years ago. I have the same question again and again for all 15 years. What the hell is wrong with frequency capping and why hasn't it been fixed by now?
You should be asking these guys, not us. We're asking the same question.
Who is counting this stuff? And when it comes to containing costs, who's paying for this stuff? Where are we in frequency capping? Have we got, see, I'm losing my mask, I'm so upset. Where are we with frequency capping? How do you talk to clients about it? Because they're watching this stuff too. And they're seeing it, and they've got to be asking you about it.
That is honestly a question for this group here. A lot of these folks, it's tough, especially if you're working through a lot of direct partnerships because you're possibly reaching the similar audience across platforms, right? So you can have frequency capping within a partner. Whatever brand's targeting you multiple times, we should call them and let them know they need to fix it. But looking at the entire campaign, I mean, I think that's really where the programmatic opportunity is, and looking at everything holistically so you can cap it across campaign, across partners. There isn't a bullseye on how you can effectively manage frequency across the entire video landscape at this point. I mean, it's something we have to look at almost intuitively based on our spend and what our individual frequency is across partners, and make some assumptions.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think whoever figures it out, that holistic frequency management, it's going to make a lot of money for sure. But yeah, it's a conversation that we have with all of our partners. And some clients care more about it than others, but it is definitely an issue across some partners.
It's still an issue. We're no better now than we were 15 years ago. I can't believe it. Jackie, Dave, Carolina, thank you so much. This
Thank
was
you,
great.
guys.
Thank you,
Great
guys.
opening.